Hello and welcome to the AP Proctor Training for this year. I have decided to do a video so everyone could watch it on their own accord. And I'm also going to send you the PowerPoint so that if you have any specific slides you want to go back to, you can. So please feel free to jot down any questions and ask me later, and we'll get through this training together. All right, first things first. Reporting times. If you guys could be here, if you're doing a morning exam by about 7:20, the kids will be arriving at 7:30. So we really want to be set up and ready to go when the kids get here. If you're an afternoon proctor, if you could check in with me in the testing office no later than 11:30, that would be great. I can get you your bucket and the kids will be arriving at 11:45. Excuse me. Proctors for all tests will need to pick up the buckets except for the small gym. I will deliver your materials down there to the small gym to you. And we're going to meet accommodated testers wherever the main check-in is happening. So for example, if you're giving an extra time test to a US history tester, they're going to go ahead and meet down in the small gym with everyone else. And then once your 2 or 3 small group testers get there, you will take them up to W301 or W302, whatever room you're going to be in. All right, in your bucket, you will have any explanation of accommodations that I will go over with you. You will have obviously your tests, your answer documents, pens and pencils, and you'll have some lined paper. If a student needs lined paper, we'll go over that earlier. Just make sure you pull that test book aside because I have to record an incident about this if they need extra paper. You'll also have, a CD player for language tests, a clock, and a timer. We are not checking IDs unless a student is homeschooled, and we do not have any homeschooled students taking AP tests. We're going to try to get all the answer documents placed on the tables before kids come in or while kids are coming in. And you will always have an extra set of general exam instructions that I'll make copies of and put in the buckets. All right, before testing, you're going to have 2 rosters. One is for attendance and one is for my records. So if you could make sure when you're checking in the kids that if you check them in on both rosters, that would be great. And then once testing begins, if you could go ahead and write absent by any no-shows, that way I'm very clear on who was absent. Students will be listed alphabetically and then they will have their seating numbers to the side. Do not have students sign the rosters. It takes too long and we're not doing that this year. And all exams that are in the lecture hall and library classrooms, you'll need to have a seating chart. We will use the rosters for exams in the gym. So one roster I will take to attendance, the other one will stay in the bucket for my records. If a student's name is not on the list, I'm obviously going to be around, but this means that they either did not register or they didn't pay for their test. So we do not have any extra tests. So if their name is not on the list, they are not testing and they need to come and see me if they are upset about that. All right, exam start times. The AP policy mandates they need to either start between 8 and 9 or between 12 and 1. So we need to start our test as close to 8 or 12 as possible, especially if there are afternoon AP exams. The closer we can start to 8, the better chance those kids have of making their afternoon exam. You may begin seating students and you can actually begin general instructions prior to 8 a.m., but please make sure that you've got all the students there if you're going to start reading general instructions early. But under no circumstances can you actually start the test. In other words, they cannot open that shrink wrap until 8 a.m. or until noon. So make sure that we're not actually starting testing. We can read the directions, but we cannot start the test until 8 a.m. All right, before testing, we're going to collect all their electronics. We're going to have them write their name on a brown bag. I've put several Sharpies in your buckets, and then they're going to put their phones in the brown bags, and then we'll put them in buckets. If it's a large group, I'll try to have several buckets, and we'll divide those by alpha. You're going to hand the student their AP ID label sheet with their name on it, and then you're going to give them their seat number that's on the roster. If we have a large group of testers, we'll try to do this in 2 lines, and the desks will be numbered so students know where to sit. We're going to go ahead and put all bags and personal items at the front of the room. So we always want to just, wherever the front of the room is, that's where you're going to tell the students to put their bags and belongings. And then we will always have a table where students can separate their snacks and drinks from their bags and be in the testing room. Now in the gym, they probably won't ever be outside the testing room, but they will be on the perimeter, and then the kids can step outside when they're eating or drinking to have a snack. All right, students can bring pencils, they can bring pens with blue or black ink, they can bring a watch as long as it doesn't have an alarm. They can bring their calculators if they're taking the calculus, physics, chemistry, or statistics exams. They can have a ruler or a straight edge for physics, and we will have pens and pencils that students can borrow. All right, items that are not allowed in the test. Basically, they can have no phones, no smartwatches, or any electronics of any kind unless they're taking the digital test and they need their laptop. So any other thing, you guys use your common sense, but no cameras, no headphones, no Bluetooth anything. They can't have a separate timer. The only thing non-electronic that they can't have is they can't have any clothing with subject-related information. All right, incidences. There is about a 5 or 6 page document that's from AP that has all the incidences listed out, and I'm going to have a printed copy of that in your bucket for you so that if something happens, you can scan through that document and see if that incident is on the list and you need to report it to me. So pretty much if you have an incident, feel free to write it on the back of those rosters so that I know something happened, and then we can talk about it and decide if that's something that I need to report. All right, there are always general instructions that we read before each exam. We want to make sure we post the exam in process, do not disturb while you're testing sign. We want to make sure that the cell phones not permitted sign is also posted. We want to distribute the answer documents to the students. There are no envelopes this year, and we want to read those general instructions for all exams. They're at the beginning of the book, the exam instruction book, but I will have a copy printed out for that so that you can read from the copy if you prefer. I will also go ahead and mark with a paper clip where your specific test instructions start. So remember, if they put labels in the wrong places, tell students to leave them alone. We don't want students trying to pull the label off. It will not impact their score. Make sure to record all stop and start times in the spaces provided in the manual. So in your bucket, you will have a manual that is called 2324 AP exam instructions. Yes, you heard that date right. It's 2324. It's not 2425. So I guess they're going to update that manual next year. And so there are places in that book for you to record the start and stop times. You want to never leave an exam room unattended. If you have more than one proctor in the room and one of you needs to use the restroom, that's fine. Just make sure that there's another proctor in the room. Make sure that all the answer documents are completed in pencil. And then you don't want to engage in conversation. You don't want to eat, read. Basically, you don't want to do anything that's not provided to the test. It says no drinking, but I'm pretty sure if you had some water, that would be fine. Students may go to the restroom one at a time. They have to leave their booklet and their answer documents closed on their desk, and these kids do not get extra time for testing. All right, we want to just make sure that we're distributing each exam individually. So when we're passing out the actual exams, you want to walk around the room and hand each child an exam packet. You do not want to hand a stack of exams to the first kid and say, pass them back. No students may be admitted to the testing room once you have started the exam. If there's some unusual circumstance, I will walk the kid in myself and we will let them start. Make sure that the students can see the clock. Once the exam has started, you want to walk up and down the aisles and make sure that students are working on the correct section. So if we're on the multiple choice section, you want to make sure they're using a pencil in the multiple choice section. If they're in the writing section, you want to make sure they're in the writing section. And then remember that you may not open any exam booklets, only students can open those. All right, I have ordered all the late tests that I know about. So if someone had a conflict where they had 2 tests at the same time, or their accommodations were going to run over and they weren't going to be able to take an afternoon test, I have already ordered late tests for those reasons. At this point, the only late tests that I will order are for students who are sick so sick they have to be hospitalized. They have an exam conflict, which I've already done. They have religious reasons and they haven't let me know about that, or they have a funeral. So pretty much I'm not ordering a late test for someone that just overslept or couldn't find the testing room. They should have taken care of that prior. A break. Students all get a 10-minute break between multiple choice and their free response sections. So remember that the only thing students can do during this time is they can have a drink or a snack and they can go to the bathroom. They can't look in a book, they can't get in their bags, they can't be on their phone, and they can't talk to each other. So if you have any of those things occur, that needs to be reported to me right away. Make sure that you monitor the students because we don't want them talking to each other. And then make sure you set a timer for the break and you begin immediately after the 10 minutes is up. So even if all students haven't returned from the bathroom, you still have to start the test again when the 10-minute break is over. All right. Section 1 is always multiple choice. So after you've distributed the test, I've said this a couple times, please make sure you're walking up and down the aisles to make sure the students are working on the correct exam section. Also make sure they're using a pencil, not a mechanical pencil, but a number 2 pencil on the multiple choice section. At the end of the multiple choice, students are directed to seal the open sides of the exam booklet with white seals, and those are provided within the exam booklet. No one except students can have access to the multiple choice questions. So just remember, proctors, you can't open the exam booklets and you can't peek at the multiple choice questions. I don't think anyone would have an interest in that. Also, please make sure that each exam sheet has an AP ID label and an AP, that the label is applied to the exam. AP US History and World History each have a separate Section 1 Part B short answer response booklet. So these exams should be collected in the order which is stated in the exam directions. All right, then after they do the multiple choice, there's a free response section. These are all essays, short responses, or spoken responses if it's a language test. They may have an insert that has exam questions. Remember that the children's written responses must be in the booklet, not in the orange insert that has the questions. We will have extra lined paper available. If a student runs out of room in their booklet, they can request a piece of paper. Remember, you only give them 1 lined paper, and then they need to put that in the booklet where that question is. They need to make sure they don't write their name on the top. They want to write their AP ID, the title of the exam, and the question they are working on at the top of each extra sheet. But they cannot write their name or their teacher's name on that piece of paper. Then when you are collecting answer documents, could you please make sure that there are 2 labels at the bottom of each document, that their name is completed in Section A, that their AP ID is entered in Section B, they have the correct date bubbled in Section F, the correct time bubbled in Section G, and a signature in Section H. And I'll have a copy of this so that you guys can double check that as you're collecting exams. All right, after the exam, you want to collect all the exam materials. You want to check the front cover of each Section 2 booklet to be sure the student has placed their label on it. You also want to make sure the student hasn't completed the important identification information area of the exam. When you are dismissing students, please dismiss those students that have an afternoon exam first. And I'll get to that in just a second. You want to make sure that you collect the AP ID labels from the students. And then if you don't have a chance to alphabetize them, that's fine. We can alphabetize them back up at the testing room. And then you want to complete the seating chart before you return the materials to me. We need to dismiss the students one or two at a time. If the students are going to an afternoon exam, I have put a dot next to their name on the roster. So these students need to actually take their labels with them to the next exam because I haven't put their labels in the bucket. So if you could make sure that those students are turning in their exam materials and leaving pretty immediately after the test to make sure that they have enough time to get to their next test. Now, obviously, if your test is ending at 10:30, you know, it's not as much of a rush. But if it's ending at 11:15, we want to give them as much time as possible for them to eat their lunch that they've brought in and get to their next exam. If when you're dismissing students, they have missed their lunch, tell them that they can go to lunch. They need to go down to the cafeteria. They can take a 30-minute lunch, and then they need to return to class. If they, like I just said, if they're going directly from a morning exam to an afternoon exam, make sure you tell them to eat their lunch before they get to their next exam and make sure they take their labels with them. If lunch hasn't started yet, they just need to report to class. And last but not least, we have our special testing kids. These are kids with extra time, or maybe the test is going to be read to them. You will have, it's called a NAR form in your bucket for every student that has special testing. I'll go over the accommodations with you and make sure that when you're collecting these tests, that those are collected separately from the rest of the tests. So I know there is one girl that gets to write her answers in the test booklet because she has vision problems. So you'll want to make sure when you collect that book that we keep that book separate from all the other books, so I can turn that one in separately. If you have a tester with extended time and they have exhausted the regular time on the test, but they finished before the extended time is over, you may stop and let them move to the next section. However, if there's more than one kid in the room and one of them hasn't finished, then you can't go on to the next session until they've all finished. So if you have any questions about that, ask me and we'll talk about it. And then again, please make sure to note the start and stop time on the NAR form provided. There's not a specific place on the form to note those times, but if you could just put it at the top, start, stop, that would be great. All right, this concludes our training. If you have any questions, let me know. You can call me at extension 2016 or on my cell phone, which is 214-926-0221. So feel free to call me, ask me any questions. And again, I really appreciate you guys helping me with administering these AP tests, and I hope you have a great afternoon. Thanks.